The Girl in the River, inspired by the 1955 murder of Judy Carter. She vanished without a sound. She was found where the water runs quiet. Years before Lily Moore was murdered, another girl was taken. Emily Travers, age 8, gone without a trace from the streets of Cabbagetown. Her body turned up weeks later in the icy Rouge River, scarf knotted tight, shoes missing, innocence stolen. The case was forgotten. Until now. Welcome back to Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. I'm Jay Nickel Investigations, and you're listening to another Whodunit Wednesday in a Mick and Mack mystery, where we step into the world of classic detective fiction. Go back to the golden era of detective fiction and enjoy stories in the tradition of the greats of writing. From Agatha Christie to Raymond Chandler to John Creasy, these are short stories I hope you enjoy. Chapter 1. A Whisper from Unionville. The envelope wasn't sealed. That's how Mick knew it was from Johnny. Pinned to the corner of his blotter with a dull brass tack, a small cream envelope had no name, no stamp, just enough cigarette ash smudged in the corner to suggest it had shared a pocket with a lighter in erasing form. Mick peeled it open with the blade of his pocket knife. Inside was a single sheet of onion skin paper folded twice, typed in Chandler's usual surgical precision. Check 1944, Unionville, Emily Travers. Another girl, another scarf. Mick leaned back in his chair, reading the line again as the station murmured around him. Phones rang, typewriters clacked. Somewhere down the hall, Mack was debating the finer points of salami sandwiches with the desk sergeant. But the name hit him like a foghorn. Emily Travers. He hadn't heard it in years. Not since his first winter back in the beat, when an old sergeant with tired eyes told him, "You'll see things that don't make the papers. The worst ones don't. That's how you know." Mick reached for the filing drawer labeled Cold Cases, Child Victims. They drove north that afternoon, the city thinning behind them. Factories gave way to fields, trolley lines became gravel shoulders. The air was wet and cold, hanging with the scent of half-melted snow and thawing earth. Unionville hadn't changed much. A few new houses stood where farms once had been, but the stretch near the Rouge still looked the same. Gnarled trees lined the river, skeletal and gray. The water cut slow and cold through the landscape, moving like it had nowhere urgent to be. Mick pulled the car to a stop near the old bridge, tires crunching in the loose grit. "This the place?" Mack asked, peering out of the sagging guardrail. Mick nodded. Two boys found her just downstream, snagged under a low branch. They were fishing for trout. Found death instead. Mack shivered, rubbing his hands together. 8 years old. What kind of man? Mick said nothing. He held the case file in his lap, yellowed and water-spotted, its edges curled like old wallpaper. Excerpt from the Travers file. Emily Travers, 8. Last seen February 12, 1944 at approximately 5:45 p.m., walking east on Winchester Street after visiting friends in Rose Avenue. Body discovered March 27th in Rouge River, approximately 27 kilometers northeast of her last known location. Victim was dressed in a blue wool coat, brown stockings and black shoes. Strangled with own scarf. White wool, knotted with force. No signs of sexual assault. No signs of robbery. All clothing intact. Shoes missing at discovery. One shoe later found upstream, neatly placed beside a bridge. Red mitten recovered near tire tracks on Concession Road. Second mitten never located. Tire tracks suggest a late model truck or delivery van. Mack walked the riverbank while Mick stood on the bridge, file in hand, eyes tracking the current like it might still carry something. "She was dumped here," Mack called back. "She wasn't killed here." Mick nodded. "Too clean, too precise. Whoever did this had time. Privacy, He brought her here after. They stood in silence for a while, the river mumbling over stones. I've seen this before, Mick finally said. That scarf, that neatness. Like the killer was more concerned with the scene than the victim. Mack looked back toward the car. You think it's the same guy? Mick didn't answer right away. I think Lily wasn't his first. The wind stirred the reeds. Somewhere in the trees a crow called once and was gone. Mick folded the file, tucked it under his arm, stared at the spot in the water where Emily's body had caught. A girl in the river, a scarf around her neck. No motive, no sign of struggle. Just silence. A whisper, echoing through time. Chapter 2. The Bread Truck at Devil's Elbow. The Devil's Elbow wasn't on most maps. It was one of those bends in the road whispered about by locals and ignored by surveyors. A twisted, narrow stretch of concession road that looped between frozen farmland and the dark tree line beyond. No lights, no fences, just snowdrifts, silence, and a ditch so deep you could lose a horse and not find it until spring. Mick eased the Buick onto the shoulder and stepped out, his boots crunching in the half-melted snow. Mack followed, tugging his collar up against the cold. This is the spot? Mack asked, surveying the curve. Mick nodded. The creek's just past that rise. Her shoes were found here, neatly placed, side by side, a full week before anyone thought to look in the water. They said maybe she walked here, Mack asked. No tracks, no mud. No sign she'd ever been on this side of the river, Mick replied. Whoever did this brought the shoes back, put them here, like a calling card. Mack let out a low breath. That's not a killer who panicked. That's a killer who wanted to be remembered. They followed the road up to a weathered farmhouse, its roof sagging under the weight of another bitter march. A windmill creaked in the distance. A rust-flecked Ford sat under a tarp. Smoke curled thinly from the chimney. A man answered the door after 3 knocks. A wiry old farmer in coveralls, one sleeve patched with what looked like wallpaper. Joe Easton, he said, squinting against the afternoon light. You fellas lost? Detectives McCathie and MacNeely, Mick said, flipping his badge. We're here about a girl, Emily Travers. Easton's face changed, just a flicker, like the edge of a curtain tugged by a breeze. That was years back, he said. Thought that was all settled. It wasn't, Mick said. You give a statement about a red mitten and a set of tire tracks. Easton scratched his jaw. I did. Found the mitten the morning after she went missing, caught in the mud near the South Bridge. What happened to it? I burned it. Mack blinked. You burned it? Didn't know what it was. Figured it blew off a wagon or got left by a field hand. Didn't want animals dragging it off. Mick opened the file and showed him a photograph of the mitten's twin. Recognize this? Easton leaned in and nodded. That's it. Only the one, though. Bright red. Too small for any of mine. Mick closed the folder. He also reported seeing a bread truck. Easton's brow furrowed. Yeah, not from around here. Never saw it before. Never saw it again. Which company? Didn't have a logo. Just plain blue. Light cab, cream box. Guy was sitting inside with the engine running. Didn't look at me. Just stared out of the trees like he was waiting for someone. Mick and Mack exchanged a glance. What time is this? Mack asked. Late morning. Sun was up. I was hauling feed sacks from the barn. He was gone by the time I came back with a second load. You remember the man's face? Easton shook his head. Didn't get close. Just remember thinking it was odd. That road's a nightmare in winter. No reason to be out here unless you have business. Even less reason to park in a blind curve. Back in the car, Mack lit a cigarette with a sigh. No logo, no delivery, no destination. Just sitting there. Mick flipped open the Travers file again. They originally thought the killer dumped Emily from the bridge. The coroner said she'd been dead for hours, maybe a day or two. And her body showed no river damage, just bruising around the neck, scarf tied tight. Mack exhaled a ribbon of smoke. So we killed her elsewhere, drove out here, stopped in that curve and waited for the right moment to toss her in? Maybe, Mick said. Or maybe he didn't toss her at all. Maybe he placed her like the shoes. Mack turned to him. You really think this was about ritual? Mick didn't answer. Instead, he turned the page in the file and stared at the photograph of the bridge. The worn wooden planks, the crooked railing, and two small shoes resting side by side like bookends. He wanted her to be found, Mick said quietly. Just not right away. Chapter 3. The Girl Who Said No. The knock on the squad room door was hesitant. 3 soft raps. More suggestion than sound. Mack looked up from his coffee, one eyebrow raised. Expecting anyone? Mick shook his head. Come in. The door creaked open and revealed a tall, slender young woman in a school coat that looked one season too small. Her gloves were clutched tightly in her hands, and her shoulders tensed like she expected someone to yell at her for being there. My name's Margaret Holland, she said. I saw the article in the Telegram about Lily Moore, the scarf. Mick stood slowly. Why don't you come in and have a seat? She sat in the corner chair, perched on its edge like she didn't plan to stay long. I don't know if it means anything. Maybe it's nothing. It happened a few years ago. I was 13. It was just after Christmas, 1943. Go on, Mick said. I was walking home from the library in Parliament Street. It was getting dark. A man stepped out from the alley next to the bakery. He was wearing a grey overcoat, dark hat, gloves. Her fingers tightened around her gloves. He asked if I could help him. He said he was watching his nephew for the afternoon, but the boy's mother was sick, and he needed someone to keep the kid company while he went to the druggist. Did you see the child? Mack asked. No, Margaret said. That's what made me nervous. He said the boy was just inside the tenement, up the stairs. But he didn't point, didn't even look back. Did he try to grab you? No, she said quickly, nothing like that. But his voice, she hesitated. It was soft, too soft. Like he was trying to sound gentle, but it didn't match his eyes. His eyes were flat, like he wasn't really looking at me, just at something behind me. Mick jotted a note, then looked up. What did you do? I said no. Told my mother was waiting, and then I ran. She looked down at the gloves again. I didn't tell anyone. It sounded silly when I tried to say it out loud. But after I read about Lily, I remembered. Did you ever see him again? No, but I remember his voice. I couldn't forget it if I tried. Mick opened the Travers case folder and gently slid the photo across the desk. Emily's school portrait, taken just a few weeks before she vanished. The girl was smiling, slightly gap-toothed, hair tied in neat plaits. Margaret froze. Her breath hitched once, then again. That's her, she whispered. I saw her. Mack leaned forward. What do you mean? Not that night, later, in the cafe near Gerard. Maybe a week before she went missing. I was with my cousin. We were getting milkshakes. Emily came in with a man, grey overcoat, dark hat, sat in the corner booth. Are you sure it was the same girl? Margaret nodded slowly. I remember because she looked nervous, kept twisting the straw wrapper around her finger. And the man, he kept asking questions. If she liked dogs, if she had any brothers, if she liked school. Did anyone else notice? My cousin did. She said he gave her the creeps. We left before they did. Mick and Mack exchanged a glance. That cafe still open? Mick asked. It is, Margaret said. Same jukebox, same linoleum. Mick stood and gently reached for the photo. You did the right thing coming in. Margaret gave a half smile, weak and fleeting. I just thought, maybe if I'd said something earlier. You did say something, Mack said. Now. As she left the room, Mick turned back to the corkboard, pinned Margaret's statement beneath Emily's photo and stepped back. She saw him, Mack said quietly, before either girl was taken. Same coat, same pitch, same stare. And the voice, Mick added, soft, too soft. Mack tapped his pen on the desk. He's been at this a long time. Chapter 4. The pattern emerges. By early evening, the squad room had quieted into that strange half-hour lull between shift changes. Typewriters paused, phones stopped ringing, and somewhere down the hall someone unwrapped the sandwich with theatrical slowness. Mick stood in front of the corkboard, sleeves rolled, brow furrowed. He cleared half the wall. Now 2 maps were pinned up side by side, one north, one east, both marked with red X's. Emily Travers, Lily Moore. 2 girls, 2 deaths, 2 directions, but one message. He stepped back, folded his arms, and stared. Rouge River up north, he murmured. Dumped under a bridge. Shoes removed, placed upstream. Red mitten burned by a farmhand. He pointed to the first map. 8 years old. Walked out of Cabbagetown and vanished. No robbery, no sign of sexual assault. Just a scarf, white wool, double knotted. Then he moved to the second. Lily Moore, new subdivision east. Abducted after answering a babysitting call. Strangled with her own scarf, plaid, thick. Pants removed, placed nearby. Shoes buckled, no struggle. Mack slouched at his desk, tapped ash from his cigarette and nodded. He didn't just want them dead, he wanted them remembered. Mick looked over his shoulder. Say that again? Mack sat up straighter, thoughtful now. Think about it. He didn't hide them, didn't bury them in a ditch or toss them where they vanished for good. He placed them, staged them. He stood, walked to the maps. Emily, face up in the creek, scarf tight, nothing else disturbed. Lily lay beside a muddy construction path like she'd been set down gently after a terrible thing. Mick nodded slowly. Shoes intact or neatly removed. Clothing disarranged but not torn. And always a scarf. Always nodded, Mack added. Always his hand doing the final thing. Mick reached for a red pencil and drew a circle around both X's. 2 different locations. 2 different years, but the same rules. Mack looked from the maps to the files and back again. We're not looking at chaos, we're looking at ritual. Controlled, Mick said, not passion, not heat. He plans it, executes it, walks away calm. Picked up a 3rd pin, bright silver. Placed in the middle space between the 2 X's. What's that? Mack asked. Where he lives, Mick said softly. Not where he kills, not where he dumps, but where he waits. Mack stared at it and then nodded. He's not picking girls by accident. He's not choosing roads he doesn't know. Mick stepped back and let the board speak for itself. Cold river, quiet mud, scarves tied too tight. 2 girls, he said, so far. Mack exhaled through his nose. How many more are we not seeing? Chapter 5. Jocko's Note. It was almost midnight when the door creaked open. Rain slapped against the windows of Division Street Station. The kind that came down hard enough to rinse the sins off a city and the guilt off a conscience. The squadron was quiet, but for the slow hiss of radiators and the occasional shuffle of Mick's pencil over case notes. Mack had long since gone home. Mick stayed. He always did when the dead refused to sleep. A gust of wet air followed the figure in. Trench coat clinging like a second skin, hat low, scent of tobacco and old news trailing behind him. Gwyn Jocko Thomas stood in the doorway, water dripping from his collar. He looked like a ghost, or maybe a reporter who had outlived his beat. "Heard you boys are digging through my old haunts," Jocko said, tossing a sodden matchbook on the desk. "Rouge River. Devil's Elbow. Scarf Girl." Mick offered no greeting, just a long look before pouring a second coffee from the pot. It was awful. Jocko didn't mind. "You cover the Travers case?" Mick asked. Every inch of it, Jocko sipped, winced and grinned. Hell of a mess. They lost her before she was even missing. He pulled a folded notebook from his coat pocket. A few pages clung to each other from the damp, but the ink was still legible. Tight, fast writing that came from chasing facts under deadline. "Didn't make the papers," Jocko said. "But I talked to a waitress back then. Annie something. She worked the counter at a place on Girard, not far from where Emily lived." He flipped to a page and read aloud. "Small girl came in with older man. Wool coat. School satchel. Man mid-30s. Dark hair, gray hat. Smelled of spearmint. Ordered cocoa and toast. Asked if girl liked dogs." Mick raised an eyebrow. "Dogs?" "Yeah," Jocko said. "Said he had 2. Asked if she liked puppies, if she had any pets. She said she had a canary." "Did she seem scared?" "Not at first," Jocko said, "but Annie said her smile dropped when he touched her wrist. Just for a second. Said he did it too gently, too deliberately." He closed the book and looked at Mick. 2 days later, Emily's gone. That same waitress filed a statement. Cops took it. Never made the report. You won't find it in the file you've got." Mick frowned. "Why not?" Jocko shrugged. Said it was unreliable. No exact date, no last name, no food receipt. Mick didn't say anything. He just took a long pull from his mug. "There's more," Jocko said. "Another girl, older, maybe 13, came forward a week after the body was found. Said she was followed from school one day. Same man, same coat. Asked her if she could help watch his nephew." Mick looked up sharply. "We've heard that line before." "Exactly," Jocko said. "Parents wouldn't let her give a formal statement. Said it would ruin her chances at secretarial school." He shook his head, disgusted. "Protect the living by silencing the dead." Mick turned to the board and ran his finger from Emily's photo to the notes under Lily Moore's. "That line," he muttered. "The voice, the scarf, all of it." Jocko lit a cigarette, exhaled toward the ceiling. "You're building something here, Mick. I can feel it." "We're trying to give the girls a voice," Mick said. Jocko tapped his cigarette against the desk. Ashes falling like gray snow. "Then listen close, detectives," he said. "Because the city's full of whispers. You just have to know which ones were meant to scream." Chapter 6. Where the Water Takes You. The maps were bleeding red thread. Mick had strung the yarn between pins, points on paper that marked where each girl had vanished, where each body had been found, where sightings had surfaced and leads had dried. Scarborough, Unionville, Cabbagetown, Girard, McCowan, Rouge River, Devil's Elbow. It wasn't a spider's web. It was a funnel. A slow narrowing from life to death. Mack stood beside him, arms crossed, brow furrowed. "You notice something?" "Yeah," Mick muttered, tapping the border of the map with the back of his pencil. "Look at the places. Not just where the girls were found. they were taken from, where they were seen. Stepped back and circled 2 key points in black. Each time right where the city fades out, where the new roads are rough and the streetcars don't run. Mack leaned in. Transition zones. Exactly, Mick said. He doesn't hunt in the heart of the city. He waits along its edges, the in-betweens, construction zones, empty lots, places where fences are only half built, and no one knows who belongs. Where no one looks twice at a man in a coat sitting in a parked car, Mack asked. Mick nodded. He doesn't just vanish into the sprawl. He uses it. That afternoon they sat in the back records room with the Travers files spread across the table. It smelled like mildew and dust and decisions made by people long since retired. Mack flipped the final page of the file and frowned. What's this? Tucked at the very back, brittle with age, nearly missed, was a postcard. Yellowing, unsent, but postmarked. Downtown Toronto, March 3rd, 1944. There was no return address, no signature. Just 6 words written in pencil. The tail of each letter curling inward like the writer was whispering. Too much noise. She liked the quiet. Mick took it gently, examined the texture of the writing. Who found this? Looks like it came in with the initial report, Mack said. But it was never referenced in the investigation. Probably tossed in as a crank. Mick turned the card over. The image was generic, a winter scene. Downtown rooftops under snow, the spire of St. James's Cathedral visible through a fog of chimney smoke. The date lines up, he said. 2 weeks after Emily went missing. A week before she was found. Mack stared at the handwriting again. It's not a confession, but it is a message. More than that, Mick murmured. It's mindset. Pinned the card to the wall between the maps. Beneath it he scrawled a note. He's watching. He waits. Then he finds the quiet. Mack exhaled. How many more times? Mick didn't answer, because deep down, he knew the silence wasn't over. Chapter 7. Chandler's Warning. The rain had turned to needles. Came down in slanted sheets beneath the viaduct, turned the street light glow to mist, and warped the rumble of streetcars above into something more primal, like distant thunder dragging chains. Mick and Mack waited near the underpass, coat collars up, water sliding down their hat brims. Even a city as weathered as Toronto, the viaduct after midnight had its own rules. Old stone, older shadows. A figure approached from the alley, his shoes splashing through the puddles without care. Johnny Chandler stepped under the arch, trench coat soaked, hat dripping, cigarette already lit. He looked like he walked out of a different film reel entirely, one that ended badly. I thought he was done after Emily, Chandler said, voice low, eyes sharp despite the rain. Then came Lily. Mick folded his arms. You know what that means? Mack muttered. He's back. Chandler's mouth twisted into something between a smirk and a sigh. No, he said. He never left. He reached into his coat and pulled out a damp matchbook, wrapped in wax paper. He handed it to Mick like it was dynamite. Queen Street, West End. A cafe that changed names every few years but never changed the smell of its friar or the color of its booths. Inside the cover was a phone number, neatly written, almost too neat. No name, just the digits. He left that on the counter, Chandler said. Slid it to a waitress like he was tipping her. Why bring it to us, Mack asked. Because I've seen this dance before, Chandler said. Same smooth voice, same controlled timing. Always polite, always precise. He paused, glancing upward as a streetcar rattled above them like a warning. He's getting bolder. Mick pocketed the matchbook. You think he wants to be caught? No, Chandler said. I think he wants to be studied. He stepped back, the rain hitting his shoulders like applause. He's not done. He turned without ceremony, vanishing into the fog, sodium like a ghost with a deadline. Mick and Mack stood in silence. Somewhere behind them, water dripped steadily from the edge of the viaduct, a rhythm like breathing. Mack finally said, "We're not chasing a man." Mick nodded. "We're chasing a storm." Chapter 8. Echoes in the Water. The lab confirmed it. The phone number scribbled inside the matchbook from the Queen Street Cafe didn't belong to the cafe. It belonged to a payphone outside a boarding house on Belsize Drive. Mick stood up at the map again. He drew a red line from Belsize to McCown Road, another from Belsize to the Rouge River. The line stretched out like spider legs from a center point, one that now had a name. North Toronto, he muttered. He's nesting there. Belsize put him 5 minutes from the Eglinton subway, Mack added, flipping through the updated case notes. That's how he moves. One stop from anywhere. Nobody looks twice at a man on the TTC. Mick pulled a thin file from the top of the pile. Old, mostly forgotten, buried in bureaucratic shuffle. A 22-year-old man charged in 1947 with impersonating a doctor. Posed as a school health official. Used a fake stethoscope, touched girls under the pretense of examinations. Pled guilty to 3 counts of indecent assault. Lived alone, no fixed job, no family visits, no record since. But his address in 1947? Also Belsize Drive. Mick circled the name at the top of the form. We've got a possible. Not enough to arrest, but enough to follow. Mack leaned back. So what now? We watch, Mick said. We let him feel the net tighten. Let him wonder if the quiet's over. Mack raised an eyebrow. And if he bolts? Mick didn't look up. And he's guilty. They didn't say the rest aloud. They didn't have to. If this man had killed Lily Moore, if he killed Emily Travers before that, and if there were others they hadn't found, then silence wasn't just dangerous, it was deadly. Mick packed the files into his coat, turned off the map light, followed Mack out into the snow. The city was colder than usual that night, and quieter. Epilogue. The Watcher. 3 floors up in a building near Mount Pleasant. The lights of Toronto flickered between the blinds. The man sat without moving. He wore a neat shirt, buttoned to the collar. A wool scarf hung beside the door, carefully folded over a hook. Beside it, a stack of matchbooks. Some blank, some marked, all catalogued. On the windowsill, an unopened newspaper sat beneath a dog-eared postcard of the Rouge River. He turned it over once. Too much noise. She liked the quiet. He folded it carefully and placed it back inside the drawer. Somewhere, a streetcar moaned its way through the snow. He smiled faintly. The city was watching, but he was watching back. The end. Next time, the final name, the concluding episode in the Lily Moore trilogy. Mick and Mack close in on their suspect, but to catch him they'll need help from Eve Whitmore, Johnny Chandler, and the past itself. Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. Available wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Subscribe to Ontario Cold Cases today so you never miss an episode. Please share your thoughts and questions in the comments.